What's up, everybody? It is another episode or conversation or whatever you want to call it, Finance for Fridays. We are here to talk about everything related to home financing. I am Haley Jones. I'm a real estate agent with eXp out of Knoxville, Tennessee.
And I'm Shay Martin. I'm a loan originator with Mortgage Investors Group, also based out of Knoxville, Tennessee.
And okay, so last week we talked about upfront costs, like as soon as you get under contract on a house. And this week we're going to talk about two of those costs because we often find that they get confused. And one of those is appraisal, and one of those is home inspection.
But we get asked this all the time, what's the difference between the two? So we just want to break it down today.
Break it on down now. Okay, so, home inspection. This is basically like, is your home in working order? Does it work? And that's a very simplified explanation, but basically it's looking at things like structurally, is it sound? Is it safe? Is it operationally just like, does it operate well? So when I talk about operational systems, I mean things like the HVAC, the electrical, the plumbing, including like water pressure, water temperature. If you turn all the faucets on in the bathroom, do they have proper pressure? Are they leaking anywhere? Things like that. And then you also have, when I say structural things, like if you look at the joists in your back deck, are they actually properly secure, things like that. And then also safety is a huge one. So this looks at your electrical outlets. This looks at, a lot of things right now, as we move into the times, it's not that your house has to be in code, but as an example, say you have outlets within 6 feet of water in your kitchen or your bathroom. Now you would get the recommendation that those need to be GFCI protected, whereas when it was built in the 90s, you didn't have that requirement. So some of the things that you're going to find on a home inspection are going to be like, the recommendation is you need to make these outlets GFCI, but that's not the requirement. But a safety issue might be like, there's a live wire, true story, there's a live wire sticking out in the front yard. And if someone trips that, or they cut it with a weed eater or whatever, like someone's getting electrocuted. Or things like garage doors, does it stop if, there's a kid in the way, or a ball or a car, is it going to stop or not? So basically the home inspection is seeing, does this work correctly? And the other thing that is huge on home inspections is water. From what's happening with the roof, are you having any leaking, to how is water draining when it rains? Do you have gutters draining right down on the house, or are they, 6 to 10 feet away from the house? So everything around, just like, is the house sound and stable, and is it rotting into the ground, or is it going to be something that is a reliable place to call home? So that's basically the home inspection. And as we mentioned last week, a home inspection could run you somewhere between $300 to $1,000, depending on who you go with, more typically around $450 to $490. So that's kind of the home inspection.
Okay. And yeah, like you mentioned, the home inspection goes into a lot of detail. So I don't typically see home inspections. I'm not involved in that. But I have bought a couple of houses, so I've obtained home inspections on houses. The home inspection is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's like 30 pages long. I mean, it will tell you everything. On the house, but it'll tell you more about your house than you probably ever wanted to know. But I always think if there's a disclosure that's for your protection, get a home inspection. Right. So it really is for your protection to know things, because there's some stuff you can't see with the naked eye on a home inspection, or when you walk through a house. So that home inspector will dig into the nooks and crannies, and they will find things within a house, some stuff that you don't necessarily care to.
Well, and that's their job. I mean, some people kind of take a home inspection as like, oh my gosh, this is awful. And some people take it as like, you hired the inspector to find things. So they are going to find stuff. But some stuff is more, major than others. If your electrical system is about to blow up, like, you want to know that, right? Yeah. But if it's like you have a loose outlet here or there, that's different, so.
Right.
And your agent, you'll kind of make a priority list of things you want. Although I would say right now, just how our market is right now, I would advise you to do a home inspection, have it done. I think your offer is not going to be as strong if you're going to ask people to do things, because at the end of the day, that's money off the bottom dollar pretty much, but it also delays the process and holds that home up. So whether or not they want to do things is one issue. And then the other issue is like a bottom dollar issue. So I would definitely say, we're going to have the home inspection done, and you can write the contract. So you're not going to ask them to do anything. You can say that up front, but that way, if the roof is falling in, if the house does have an electrical problem, if the plumbing and the septic tank is like backed up and it's a deal breaker kind of stuff, then you're protected. You could back out. And, but I would say a home inspection, the more you know is better, even with new construction. I think that's surprising too, is like, I advise all my people, new construction, to have a home inspection, just because with the builder, they're going to fix any issues. Like, I recently had clients, new construction, and the AC unit was like sitting like this. And it was nothing that any of us caught. And then when we looked at it, we're like, how do we not catch that? But the home inspector caught it, right? So then the builder fixed it for us, no problem. And so, just kind of keep that in mind. But your agent will walk you through that process and kind of, if you need to, like, some of it is major and some of it is like, oh my gosh, this is major, and it's actually not. So your agent will kind of help you through that as well. So
yeah, and you can probably speak to this too, but especially now, and this is what I found the last time I bought a house, with this market being what it is, sometimes you have 30 minutes on your showing to breeze through a house. You're not going to see everything. And so that home inspection is then the home inspector is going to come out and take 2 to 4 hours to go through the house that you didn't have the luxury of taking. And so there's just not going to be stuff that you're going to see that the home inspector will see. So the next step in the process would be the appraisal. The big difference between an appraisal and a home inspection determines the condition of the home, as Haley talked about. The appraisal, the sole purpose of the appraisal is to determine the value of the home. So how much is this home worth? That is critically important if you are securing financing, because we as a lender can only lend off of the lesser of the sales price or the appraised value. So that value determines how much you can get a loan for, basically. So how the appraisal process works, it's about a 2-week process. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer when appraisers are busier, but we say roughly about a 2-week process. During that time, a qualified appraiser is going to complete a physical inspection of the house. So that's where people get confused, because we'll say appraisal inspection, home inspection. It's very different. Really, they're going out to measure the home. They're supposed to measure the home to determine the actual size. And the reason they do that is because then they compare it to other homes of a similar size to see what have other things sold that are this size, that are close to this house. So they do that as part of the inspection. And then they also do a physical inspection of the property to determine and make sure there's no health and safety concerns. Again, not as detailed as the home inspection, but if there's any glaring issues with the house, they're going to be required to be fixed by the appraiser, because they want to make sure that there's no health and safety concerns for the buyer, the borrower, and also for the lender putting a loan on the house. So it is to protect the lender and it's to protect the buyer, to make sure there's no major issues with the house that would cause possibly an issue later on, where it could make someone, get in over their head and not be able to fix things with the house. And then, potentially, again, long term down the road would be potentially lead to a foreclosure if there's this major structural issue with the house that's going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars that someone can't afford to fix. They're going to walk away from that house. And so that's part of the appraisal, is just making sure that there's no major issues with a home and a property that a lender's putting a loan on, and also that someone's buying. And then so part of that process, they do that inspection, but then they also are analyzing data about the house. So historical data, what has it sold for in the past? They're making sure that the owner of record matches the seller on the contract. So something so simple, but they're making sure that the person selling the house actually does own the house. And then they're also comparing other houses in the area that have sold to determine the value. That's how they determine the value. So they compare all of these sales and all the data of the home to determine what is this home worth. Even if you're doing a conventional loan, which yes, is going to be a little bit less strict on the appraisal, if you're securing financing, unless you're paying cash for a house, the house does have to meet minimum property standards. So part of the appraisal, they give the house a rating. So C1 through C6. C1 is like absolutely beautiful condition, nothing wrong with the house. You don't really see that because everything's going to have some sort of condition rating. So C5, C6, we're not going to be able to lend on that. You're not going to be able to get a loan on a C5 or C6 condition. And what that is usually is like there is a ton of deferred maintenance. There is floors missing. There's walls missing. There's things like that where this is just not secure enough to put a loan on this house. So I've seen some things like that pop up on even like a conventional appraisal. So anything that's going to lead to a soundness issue with the house. So you touched on water earlier. The appraiser will mention things like that. Like, I see an issue here. Water intrusion is a big thing because that could then lead to a soundness issue. So you'll see water a lot pop up on appraisal. The big thing on an appraisal, if something comes up on the appraisal inspection, it's not going to be a shock because it's been found on that home inspection already. So you've probably already seen that on the home inspection. And usually if it's a big issue like water, structural, things like that, there's already been a conversation about it.
Right. So let me ask you this. So even if somebody is getting a conventional loan on a house they're planning to flip, when they do that appraisal inspection, I know they're trying to value the home, but if they're paying way under value using a conventional loan, can they still not get a loan on it?
And again, it goes down to what's the current condition of the house. Okay. So if the minimum property standards meets that current condition, it will pass, it's fine. But I have run into that lately because of this crazy market and things like that. People are like, well, I'll just buy a fixer-upper house. Well, even a fixer-upper, you have to really still look at it and say, okay, are there going to be soundness issues here? So are there broken windows or other things that could lead to water intrusion or different things like that will still pop up even on a conventional appraisal.
So even if it's like they're buying it for 20 grand, but it appraises for 50, could that still stand in the way? It sounds like yes.
Potentially, yeah. So I've had one similar to that recently. And so the value was perfectly fine. We had plenty of room in the value, but Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, which are conventional, the agencies that back conventional loans, they will not lend. They wouldn't lend on the house because of the condition. So there was so much deferred maintenance on the home that you couldn't obtain a loan. So really, if you're looking into too much of real true fixer uppers, things like that, you really want to look at like a renovation loan, which is a whole different topic for a whole different day. But if you're wanting to do something like that, you're probably looking at like renovation loans, which then your appraisal is like subject to everything being fixed. So if you're truly needing to buy a house, secure financing and the seller's not willing to fix anything, there's really no true as is home unless you're paying cash, because if there's a lender involved, there are still minimum things that have to be met with the home in order for us to put a loan on it. And again, every loan program is different for things that will be required. But at minimum, you have to be able to walk through the house and make sure, okay, there's no holes in the floor where someone could trip and fall. There's no, things that are going to lead to potential health and safety issues. I always use health and safety, but you can dig in a little bit further. There has to be things like a heat source for the house. I mean, there's just different things that a home has to have in order to be able to obtain a loan, a traditional, conventional FHA, VA, USDA loan.
Yeah. And I think I just want to remind people, like, I know sometimes it can be a pain, like this getting it appraised or the home inspection, but at the end of the day, this stuff is actually in place for, consumer protection. If we look back at 2008 and how things were happening then versus what's happening now, it's like there's a lot more protection for you as a buyer. So I just want to say, like, I know sometimes it can be like, oh, an appraisal or whatever, but actually I think truly these are both, like a home inspection and an appraisal, are really good things. Even though sometimes I feel like they get a bad rap. Yeah.
That's a great point. Everyone thinks like the lender's the bad guy with the appraisal. The appraisal is done and the home inspection is done to protect you as the buyer. So one, with the value, they want to make sure that you're paying for it what it's worth, which let's not even look at current times right now, because obviously that's thrown out the window a little bit. But historically, overall, the appraisal is done to make sure that you're not overpaying for a home that's not worth it. And then those major items that pop up on those minimum property standards, that's to make sure you're not getting into something that's going to cause these major issues for you once you do buy this house. They're done, everyone gets mad at the appraiser or whatever, but the appraiser's trying to protect the buyer and the person, the person ordering that appraisal, which is technically the buyer, the borrower.
It's not all doom and gloom. And I do feel like I do also, like, I'm always the optimist, but I feel like if something happens, home inspection or appraisal inspection or whatever, that just wasn't meant to be. Like, there's a better house for you. So even though the process, even though the process is like a roller coaster and it's so emotional, I do believe that, like, people land where they are supposed to. Just wanted to say
and something that not necessarily that we want to get into today, but there are, if you are in this crazy market where you're offering over and above what a home is listed for and things like that, I have some great appraisal strategies and ways to approach what we call the appraisal gap. So if that appraisal does come in short, I already have some great strategies in place. So feel free to reach out. I'll be happy to go through that in more detail with anybody, and that can be a topic for another day as well.
Yeah, but maybe we can talk about that next.
Yeah, that's not necessarily, we definitely want to talk about the difference of home inspection appraisal, so that's a whole nother thing. But in this market, we definitely want to touch on that a little bit, that is happening more often. So there's even a way and a path to deal with that.
And I think too, I just want to make this point as well, that if you like regarding appraisal and feeling like you're overpaying, because I feel like a lot of people are feeling like they're overpaying right now. But if you're going to stay in that house for 7, 10, 15 years, like, that's okay. Like, you're going to get your value back out of it.
Right.
And even, our inventory is so low right now that some people are like, houses they bought in August, they've been relocated and now they're selling for, so there's going to be the value. So I feel like if you're walking to it afraid and like, this is a negative thing, then that's what you're going to get out of it. So I try to like reframe, but
that's a great point. So, it's a different market. It's just a little bit scarier market, but that's what we're here for, to help talk people through that. We're seeing things daily. And so we've got strategies in place. So don't let that be a deterrent to you starting the process. If you have, if you haven't even gotten that far and you just have questions about how the appraisal and the home inspection things are working right now, definitely reach out to us and we'll try to put those fears at ease.
Yes, for sure. Okay. I think that's everything for today for this Finance Friday session. Again, I'm Haley Jones. I'm a real estate agent with eXp based out of Knoxville, Tennessee. I am your real estate person.
And I'm Shay Martin. I'm a mortgage loan originator with Mortgage Investors Group, and I'm your trusted financing advisor.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to Finance Fridays. If you need us, let us know, and we'll see you next Friday.